Okay, it is Wednesday, and this is week 2 of Module 1. So I want to go ahead and get started on our weekly meeting for EDU 503. We're having a snow day here in Knoxville, Tennessee, so we are all on snow day brain, so I have to make some adjustments too so that everybody can figure out what's going on here. I'm going to go ahead and go to the PowerPoint presentation because it just keeps me focused and it gives you something to work with also. So let's just go ahead and do that. I have a feeling that most people will be watching the recording today, but that's perfectly fine. I want to double check to make sure it's working. I'm not seeing a whole lot of activity there, so let me see. Let me make sure. Let me see if this is any better with the sound. Not seeing the little sound down like I usually do, and it worries me that maybe the sound is not working. Let's check. It says computer audio checked. Okay. Hello, I'm just checking the sound to make sure my headset has proper microphone, and it looks like it's working just fine. How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm happy to see that the sound is working. That's always a problem when you open up the video afterwards and you can't hear anybody. So we are in week 2 of the Zoom meetings. It's a little bit confusing making the transition from the 5-week, 5-module sessions to 7-week, 5-module sessions. So as we go through this process, I want to make sure everybody understands. I'm sorry that you guys are cohort 1, but every single class that you have will be the first time that instructor has done 7+1. So the good thing is what we're doing here in the EDU 503 class is we're getting all of the kinks out so that as we move into all courses being in the 7+1, we know what glitches we have in Canvas and we know what calendar corrections that we have to make. So we're working together very closely with Hot Chalk and with St. Thomas to make sure that we're rolling fluidly and effectively into the next term. So again, check your announcements daily, especially since we've got some changes coming with the calendar, and every time something changes on Canvas, you get a notification. So if you get confused, just check the announcements. If there's a major change, it will be there, and you can also check email. I'm trying to see who all I have on. It says that I have 4 people, but I only see, let me see who I have. Okay, there we go. Now I can see that there are 4 people here. So let's take a look at these assignment deadlines. For Module 1, that doesn't necessarily mean week 1. Module 1 continues into week 2. The introduction was due on the 11th, and the first discussion was due, the dates bounced around here and there, but nonetheless, we have, hang on just a minute, let me go back. I'm having some technical difficulties, and I think it's completely caused by the user. I don't think it has anything to do with anyone except me being on a snow day today and having no idea what is going on in the outside world. So the introduction was due on the 11th, and the discussion deadlines flipped back and forth because when we run this class next time, the master calendar is going to have the discussion be the first assignment due, which I think is a healthy thing because you get into your topic a little bit, you get to know your colleagues a little bit, and then the following week, your literature preview is due. So even though it may say late, it is not late. Your discussion is due tomorrow night by 11:59, the first week's discussion, and then your replies are due on the 21st, which is Sunday. After that, all discussions will fall Wednesday and Sunday, probably for every course that you take in the master's program. Our first assignment was due on the 14th, which stressed me out just a little bit. I'll be honest with you, because the literature preview, now that you've done it, you realize it's a lot more work than what is visualized on the surface. However, I'm giving everybody the opportunity to resubmit by this Saturday night, which will actually be the master calendar's due date after this term has passed. So the changes that we're seeing in our calendar are not just for this term, they're for every term. So the master calendar is being manipulated at your expense, but I'm hoping that as this calendar changes with the course writers, you all are able to benefit from that. So I'll give you an example. I wanted to show you my calendar. For example, the Zoom meetings are showing up on Wednesdays because I add those as events at 6:30 Eastern Time. And then your weekly assignments show up on Saturdays. And then your discussions will show up on Wednesdays and then Sundays. Now, this week is the exception. Don't worry. No one's assignment will be counted late as long as I get your initial post tomorrow night and I get your following discussion, and this is actually February. That's why it looks confusing here. We're back in January. So as long as I get your initial post by Thursday the 18th and your reply by the 21st, it will be counted as on time. You notice here the assignment deadline for the research proposal has been changed because I felt like the first weekend right after the class started was too soon for such a difficult assignment. Do you guys agree with that? Let me unmute you. Do you think the literature preview is too much for week one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my argument. And I think we benefited from it because you had the opportunity to take another week to resubmit. But that's a tremendous amount of pressure, a tremendous amount of new skills that you have to use in that first assignment. And so I really appreciated it when the course writers allowed us to move that to the second week. And I toyed with the idea of leaving it in the first week and then allowing you the opportunity to resubmit. And I know that some students will not even look at it until 2 days before it's due or 24 hours before it's due. But for those students who are conscientious and take my advice, I will most certainly encourage them to show me something before the 20th. So I think this is going to be a healthier model for this course. So I appreciate your feedback with that. My gut was right that time. So I'm not always right, but my gut was pretty much on target just based on what former students had told me and what you guys had told me. So my monitor is up higher. That's why it looks like I'm looking into the sky when I'm talking to you. My webcam is lower on my laptop. So I apologize if it looks like I'm asking God for help. I probably am, but I'm adjusting to a new setup here, so I apologize if the eye contact shifts. Okay, so let's take a look. The calendar updates we already discussed. We also discussed synthesis is where you take information from multiple sources and you bring it together into one unique document or one unique creation. And the whole purpose of the literature review was to point out gaps in the research to defend your reason for conducting a study, but also the process of using APA format and standard English, academic language, and the content of your articles, and locating the research and narrowing down the articles to what fits your topic and answers your research question. That whole process within itself is very constructivist. It's very much synthesis as well. So I do appreciate that process, but I feel like week one, we just throw you into the deep end of the pool and you haven't even doggy paddled yet. So I'm appreciative that we have one more week for you to make corrections if you choose to. So let's take a look at the criteria for assignment one, because most of you have decided to resubmit. Make sure you pay attention to every single listing. And then there are also implied items that come in into play. So the resubmission is due the 20th. Your preview should point to a specific problem. Now, we don't always know our hypothesis or we don't always know what our research problem is when we first start looking at the literature. And this class sort of pushes us into what I consider to be a step 2, which is the literature preview. I prefer to do an annotated bibliography in the beginning and scan on a surface level several articles. But this literature preview should be pointing you towards a narrow problem or question to be answered. Your title should fit the problem. You should use at least 5 in-text citations, whether they be quotes or paraphrases, which that's a lot if you haven't used APA format. And then you should show 5 references on your reference page. And if you notice, I responded to you guys saying that in order for it to be a current reference, it needs to be within 10 years. So make sure if you use an older reference beyond 10 years, it's a 6th reference or a 7th reference, because we want your research to be up to date. Also, your in-text references should be done according to APA style, and your reference page should be done according to APA style. So this is the reason why I said after week 2 and into week 3, we turn a corner, because then you figure out what this whole APA thing looks like. It's almost like shell shock in week 1 when you see all of those examples. So a general rule for all assignments done in graduate school is that they be APA formatted throughout. That includes a title page. That includes double spacing, 1-inch margins, 12-point font in Times New Roman. And there are rules for citations and references, and for properly quoting lines that are more than 3, consisting more than 3 lines. You should be following the conventions of standard English. There should be no contractions or casual language, and it should be written at a graduate level of fluency in the English language. Now, how do you figure out if you're doing that? Honest to goodness, the best way to figure it out is to turn in your first paper and look at my feedback. I have been known to provide very specific and careful feedback, and it seems to be a lot in the very beginning, but the literature preview is the document that really puts to the test your writing skills. And so we want to make sure as we leave the literature preview and move into the research problem that you have a handle on APA format as well. So I wanted to show you just a quick link that I've added, and it may or may not come up. Sometimes it works for me on my Mac and other times it doesn't. This is on discussion board etiquette.
It's one way that we use the principle teach one another from the BYU Idaho learning model. In online courses, we use discussion boards a lot to teach one another, unlike a discussion in class.
Okay, so this is from the BYU, Brigham Young University, course model for how to do discussion boards, discussion board etiquette. Now, I'm not going to play the 3-minute video for you, but I've highlighted it and placed it in this presentation so that you have access to it. So if you play the PowerPoint through after this session is over, you have access to this. And if you hover over this graphic, you will see the YouTube website as well. But if you click on this link, it should take you directly to it. And it gives you some pointers on proper etiquette for discussion board. Now, one of the things that you have to be very cautious of with your discussion boards in this class is that you are not necessarily supposed to copy and paste your entire assignment 1 into the discussion board. You're supposed to give us a little overview, a little paraphrase, or an interesting piece of what you studied. 300 words seems like a lot, but when you follow all of the bullet points and all of the requirements, 300 words is really not that much. So what I want to do is go through the discussion criteria. Now, as we move into this discussion, you notice there is not a rubric for discussion 1. That is an editing error on the part of the course writers. I have let them know we do not have a rubric. My students need to know exactly what it's going to take to earn 100% of the points. So I am showing you here how you get all of your points on the discussion. And remember, we have the reason why I have Wednesday here is because usually it's on Wednesday that the discussions are due, and then Sunday, but the first discussion board is actually due on a Thursday. So we're flexible with that. So you're going to discuss your research setting and interest. So you have to mention both of them. You have to discuss your research idea and the research problem that's evolving from the research idea that you have, and your purpose for studying or solving this problem. So all of those issues have to be addressed in your initial post. There should be 300 words with at least one reference and one citation, and the posting should be APA formatted. Now, I will go ahead and tell you, when you copy and paste into the discussion board or you type into the discussion board, your spacing as far as lines go will not come through. It just does not work. What I'm looking for is how you cite the reference, and are you listing it under a reference in APA format at the very end. So, and you should be using standard English in your discussion boards. We've had students in the past who sort of use chat room or text language, and it confused the purpose of the assignment. So, as we take a look at the discussion question, a little more closely, I realized that the description of the assignment and the dates, they're just not lining up. So I want to share with you that tomorrow night and Sunday are when you have to have these two things done. If you realize, hey, I didn't do that exactly like I wanted to, just post again or post a correction. It's okay. It's a very fluid, flexible type of format. And so we're completely okay with people saying, hey, that first one was a draft. I want to add something to my post. So anyway, you're describing your research setting with an initial post and all of the things we just talked about. That is worth 2.5 points. The replies are also worth 2.5 points. So if you do not turn in the initial post on time, the maximum you can get if you turn in your 2 replies on time is 2.5. If you do an initial post but you do not have 2 replies, then the maximum you can get there is 2.5 points. If your initial post is not turned in on time, but it still gets there before the replies are done, then you lose 1 point for that. And I know that it seems like being redundant here, but make sure you're very careful, because this is all I have to base your grade on, are the criteria listed in the instructions. So it's all there. Now, because of the revision deadlines, we as we've already discussed, I think I put the 17th on the board, not realizing that the first week is supposed to be Thursday. So that's not a big deal. But one thing that is a big deal is that 5 points for a discussion board is 5% of your grade. We only earn 100 points in this term. So if you fail to take the discussion board seriously, or you think, well, I'm not going to do this discussion this week, I've just got too much to do, that's a fatal mistake, because 5 points out of 100 makes a huge difference in an A or a B and a B and a C. And we follow the rubric and we follow the grading scale, and I do not curve grades. So please make sure you understand that every discussion board is 5% of your grade. Okay, we talked about the typical example for the literature preview, and I wanted to ask, I'm going to go ahead and okay, does anyone need me to go back to the literature preview example and answer any questions? Okay, I'm not hearing a yes. If you have a question regarding the literature preview, please just unmute yourself and ask, okay? Because it's easier for me to keep you on mute because I don't hear all of the fun things going on at your house, and it's really a good thing that you don't hear all the fun things going on at my house because it's crazy here. So, again, I've included a link regarding APA formatting. So if you take this link, it will take you to the St. Thomas website. It will show you how to do an interlibrary loan, which is not really that relevant, how to prevent plagiarism, how to cite sources. So if you click on that, it has the 6th edition of APA, which is the most recent style guide. So everything is here. I think it's a little overwhelming because we have so much information being thrown at us. We're learning how to use Canvas. We're learning how to create habits to read announcements and emails and communicate with one another. And then on top of all of that, we have to learn an entirely new format of documenting. So that is available. And then again, this is a close-up of how to cite sources, which is exactly where I went. So one thing I want to look at very quickly is I want to go back to a couple of examples. Now, introducing a quote with an author tag. If you drop a quote into a paper, I will probably say use an author tag or other introductory phrase. So sometimes people throw quotes into the paper and they don't have this little introductory part here, and it creates a disconnect in your communication. So according to Lee is an author tag because I'm mentioning the last name of the author. The date goes in parentheses and there's a comma here because it is an introductory phrase, not because I used the date of the source. So be careful of that you are only using a comma if it's an introductory phrase or if it's involving a compound sentence. Now, another issue I saw this week so far is that students are spelling out the word "and" in their citations. In MLA format, the new revised 8th edition, because I teach this on ground, it is spelled out. It is very annoying to me, but that is the way it is. So if you use some sort of automatic bibliography maker online with software or an app, sometimes there are glitches and those formats aren't exact, and that's why I'm not a big fan of using these systems that do the bibliography and the reference pages for you. I'm old-fashioned when it comes to that, and I do my own. So this is the and symbol. But if you use, let me see if I have another example. Okay, if you see here, Glazer and Talbert were referenced in this sentence, but they're not in a citation. They're mentioned in the narrative of the sentence. So and is spelled out and the date afterwards. You also notice that we mentioned the authors rather than the title of the work. So you might want to make sure you're using the author's name and the date, and that's what specifies which work you're working on. And then also here you'll see if there's a quote that's 3 lines or more of text, you indent, you keep with double spacing. That's a change in recent years. You indent the quote and you still list the page number. And you know what? I think that might be an error. I think this period should actually go here. So basically that's what I wanted to share with you as far as common errors that I'm finding. Let me see if we can skip over to the reference page. Yeah, let's go to the reference page here. Okay, so again, references is not in bold. You capitalize just the first word of the reference title. That's called sentence case because you're using the case capitalization for sentences, unless you have a colon. And if you have a colon, it's just like in a sentence here, you capitalize that piece. And of course, if it's the name of a book, you italicize it. If it's the name of a journal, you italicize it as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop the share and see if you guys have any questions. Okay, so if you have a question, unmute yourself. This was a rather quick meeting.
I have a question, Dr. Sands. I apologize for background noise. I'm with my 2 kids, and they are under 3 years old. So if you hear anything funky.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry you're having. Listen, every time my husband deployed, I went back to school, and so I was like the single mom with young kids.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to do it any other way. So that's perfectly fine. What's your question?
Thank you. My question is about the references. When we look at the archives online on EBSCOhost or ERIC, is it absolutely necessary to include the direct hyperlink from where we retrieved the article, or is that like up to our discretion?
Well, to be honest with you, the whole idea is for me to be able to locate your article from your references page. So if there is a hyperlink, include it. simply because I would have to Google that title, and sometimes I do just click on some of your references randomly to see if it will take me there. So I prefer that you do put the retrieved from and the hyperlink on it, and it will also help you if you make mistakes or you need more information to locate that information again.
Got it.
But if you don't do that, I don't count it wrong. But a clue for me is that if you have the journal name, the journal volume, the journal number, and the pages, we can get by with that because I can easily search it. But if you don't have any page numbers listed there, it's a clue to me that it's an online source, and I'm not going to be able to find it unless I have that hyperlink. So that's a personal judgment thing. But I do check from time to time to make sure sources are what they say they are, because I know you're surprised, but every once in a while I have somebody just copy a reference list from someone else's document.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Dr. Sands.
Okay, no problem. Anybody else?
Dr. Sands?
Yes, ma'am.
This is for clarification. For the discussion that is due tomorrow, we need to have a title page. It needs to be 300 words, and the one site that we use needs to be referenced, correct? Or is it a little more informal?
It's informal. On the discussion board, you don't have to have a title page because you're typing directly into the discussion board, or you're copying from a Word document that you've just typed up and you're pasting it in. So you don't need a title page. You don't even necessarily have to double space, because formatting does not transfer over to the discussion board. So I don't want to frustrate my students any more than they already are. But the key there is to have a citation and to have references at the very bottom centered, if you can center it. It's not a big deal if you don't. And then what your source is that you used in your response.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And just to let you guys know, prior to this term, every week we had a discussion board and a major assignment for 5 weeks. So it was back to back, completely slammed for 5 weeks. So I almost feel like I'm not teaching you enough, because my lessons are split into segments. So, but I knew with the literature preview, you guys were going to be like shell shocked. Was it more work than what you expected? I guess it wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to respond to that. It definitely was a little overwhelming on the onset, but I have to tell you that once I got into a rhythm of, just looking through tons and tons of articles, I found my rhythm, and I was able to go through it, for hours almost without even feeling the time go by. Like, I got very invested, and the problematic that I was looking for became more and more clear as I continued researching, which is how I ended up with a lot of more references even than originally intended.
Right.
And on that note, I actually have one more question, but this is not specifically about the literature preview. This is more about the discussion board. I did already complete my post on the discussion, but I have I'm sorry, that's my son. That's my son. He's 10 months old.
My 17-year-old might make noises like that, and I think yours has a better reason. Mine is 17.
Yeah. It never ends, mom life.
No, it doesn't.
Thank you for understanding, everyone, and Dr. Sands. But anyway, on the discussion board, I don't know if I made it clear what my research setting is, and I just want a little bit of clarification on what that would be. I know that I want to, if I were to carry out the study, I'd want to address elementary and middle school, and I think I included that information in my post, but would that be a description of a research setting, or do I have to be a lot more specific at this point?
I think for the discussion board, that's fine, but when you address it in your research proposal as we move on, you are going to tell us the exact school and staff members and groups of students or whomever that you're working with for the study. So, but you're just getting started right now, and that's why it's good to start looking at your information early, even though we're revising the writing part, because there's a lot going on, and you're starting with a topic and narrowing down to a research problem and writing a literature preview and using all these new methods. It's huge. And I will tell you that my students have told me semester and semester and term again that this class was the best class that they had at St. Thomas, because I prepared them not only for the next steps in the content, but for the next steps in writing, because you're going to be writing article reviews and doing research and writing case studies, and you need to know all of these things before you move on. So I'm trying to help you be well prepared for the next level, and what is happening to you is exactly what should be happening to you. You're hitting that frustration level, and then something clicks and it's like, oh yeah, give me more, give me more, give me more. And so that's what's supposed to happen. So that's perfectly fine. Anybody else have a question or a clarification or a complaint or anything? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone, so I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. I will post this video online before 10 o'clock tonight, probably sooner than that, along with the PowerPoint presentation. Please, if you have concerns, let me know. If you go into the discussion board and you take a look at my comments on how to get all the points on a discussion board, that should help you as well. So it's always good to go in and review. If you're an early poster and there aren't two other people who've posted in the discussion board and I haven't posted yet, go ahead and send me an email and I'll throw something in there so that you can have an opportunity to reply before the very last minute. For some of us, the last minute is the only minute we have. So, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and end. Thank you so much for coming online, and let me know if you need anything. Have a great rest of the week.